Good morning. 100 years ago, this very morning, on September the 10th, 1912, the institution that we know as Texas Lutheran University opened its doors in Seguin for the first time. As probably most of you know, TLU traces its origins to the founding of the Evangelical Lutheran College of Brenham, Texas, in 1891. Throughout its time in Brenham, the fledgling school struggled with uncertain enrollment and financial difficulties. When the Businessmen's Club of Seguin, a forerunner of today's Seguin Chamber of Commerce, enticed the school to move to Seguin by offering 15 acres of land, 10 years of free utilities, and $20,000 in cash, which Dr. Sitzler informs me is equivalent to about $450,000 today, the deal was struck, and the rest, as they say, is history. When it relocated to Seguin, the school was established as the Lutheran College of Seguin, Texas. In addition to a different name, there is very little about that institution that resembles the TLU of today, at least on the surface. For example, even though its name was the Lutheran College of Seguin, Texas, it was not a college as we understand the term, but rather an academy, or what we know as a high school. That status is evidenced by the football schedule that fall of 1912, when our boys played Brackenridge High School of San Antonio twice, Flatonia High School, and Yorktown High School. By the way, we went 3-1. And here's what the campus looked like then. One building, affectionately known through the years as Old Main, sitting in the middle of a treeless plain. It was located where today's lovely Alumni Park sits, and where you can see the building's cornerstone as a reminder of our early history. And by the way, the red bricks that were used to build the Evelyn Strang Chapel Plaza and the Joe K. Min Plaza in front of the library are Old Main bricks that were saved when the building was torn down in 1976. And speaking of Evelyn Strang, she was not here in 1912, but she has been around this campus on almost a daily basis since the 1940s. And Evelyn, as far as I know, you have lived and seen more of our history in Seguin than anyone else, and we're happy you're here today to help us celebrate. Evelyn, would you stand, please, and let us recognize you? Well, back to our story. By today's standards, I think it is absolutely amazing that anyone would go to a school that looked this desolate. But thank goodness they did, even though there were just 60 students on that first day. And what about student life in those early days? From the 1912 catalog, quote, 5:45 a.m. is the time to rise. Roll call is at 6. Perfect silence must be kept after 9 p.m. Bedtime is 10:30 p.m. Visiting saloons, theaters, and places for dancing, playing cards, owning or using tobacco or chewing gum on the school grounds in any form is strictly forbidden. Imagine that. We were a smoke-free campus 100 years before it became popular. Oh yes, and tuition was a little different in 1912 too. Depending on which course of study a student selected, he or she paid between $13 and $21 per semester. In the ensuing years, of course, the institution took root and grew. Our status changed from academy to junior college to senior college. Our name changed twice. Land and buildings were added to the campus. Enrollment grew, and we hope will grow even a little bit more in the coming decade. Students, faculty, and staff became more diverse. Our athletes became bigger and stronger. We no longer teach agriculture, but we do teach computer architecture and operating systems. Chapel attendance is no longer required, and female students no longer have to wear coats over their shorts as they walk across campus on their way to their PE class. As we look at the arc of our history over the past 100 years, so much has changed. But thank God the most important things about Texas Lutheran have not. From its origins in Brenham in 1891 through its relocation to Seguin in 1912 to today, this institution has been grounded in the very sure and strong beliefs that we should honor God by developing to the fullest extent our intellectual, spiritual, social, and physical selves, that both learning and faith coexist in our daily lives and that each strengthens the other, and that we are called to be servant leaders by dedicating ourselves to improving the lives of others, including and perhaps especially in our home for the past 100 years, Seguin. During the Seguin Centennial Year, as we remember our origins, celebrate our advances, and recommit ourselves on this historic occasion to our core principles and mission,
TLU. Those 3 letters make me smile. I spent the summer at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, Georgia, and I loved it. I had a great experience. But, as they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and being at another campus only reminded me of how much I love this beautiful place in good old Seguin, Texas. As I drove back into town this August, I found myself literally smiling. I was excited to be coming back to where I belong. TLU is more than a collection of buildings and grassy fields with the occasional essence of Tyson in the air. TLU is where we all come to find out how we belong. We belong in the classroom, where we hear new ideas, we find our strengths and our weaknesses, make a few mistakes, and begin to see the value of a lifelong liberal arts learning. To me, belonging in the classroom means getting to eat venison tacos in Dr. Sitzler's class, as I realize there's so much more to food than what the aisles of HEB have to offer. It means walking into a 400-level math class where there's no textbook. And if you know anything about math, you know that's not a comforting feeling. Instead, we were given a hefty packet of theorems that we had to prove, and we did. We left that semester with an understanding of a whole other side of math, beyond solving assigned problems in a book where Susie buys more watermelons than one person could ever actually eat. Belonging in the classroom means taking classes that help me to grow in new ways and develop my love of math. Just maybe some of these skills will equip me to be part of solutions to problems in this world, because as a student, I belong to more than just a TLU classroom. We belong in our residence halls and apartments, where we're faced with discovering what it means to live with people who are different than us. We learn how to be responsible for our day-to-day needs, like clean living spaces, clean laundry, food, sleep, sometimes. And whether it's a late night of studying, sharing a strong pot of coffee with your roommate, or a deep and challenging late-night conversation, we begin to see how we all, even those we disagree with, belong in our living communities and at TLU. Belonging in my living community has at times involved helping to mediate misunderstandings. Taking a moment to see things from another person's perspective not only makes you a better friend, but it's such an important life skill in all relationships, with professors, peers, colleagues, parents, and significant others. Understanding the perspectives of those around us is how we find how we belong in our community. What truly completes the TLU experience is how we belong to groups and organizations outside of the classroom. It's where the rubber hits the road, where our book knowledge becomes integrated into our life experiences. It might be what we think of first when we consider how we belong to TLU. Whether it's a club or a group of friends or the people you volunteer with every week, it's where you fit in. For me, belonging to the math club at TLU means, well, besides getting a bit of teasing from the less mathematically inclined, getting to work with a group of other students who share my interest. We work together to create an area-wide math competition for high school calculus students so that they also can realize the fun of working with a team to reach a common goal. Belonging to an amazing Bible study means having a fantastic group of women to encourage me and challenge me and show me what it means to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with my God every day. Valuing and sharing interests and passions is the crux of how we belong here at TLU. And finally, we belong in Seguin. We've belonged here for 100 years now, and being a part of this particular community shapes our college experience. What is a first year at TLU without a visit to the giant pecan on Court Street? What is a degree from TLU without at least a part of that work having been fueled by coffee from Cairo Java? As students at TLU, we are also members of this community, and we have an impact on them too. Whether it's giving of our time at a local school through America Reads, or helping out at my father's farm, or volunteering in Seguin through the annual Hot Dogs Day of Service, we help shape this community too. It's by taking what we do inside the tree-lined borders of TLU and sharing it outside in the city of Seguin that we see the greater purpose of what we've learned on campus. We see why we belong here. We all belong. We all matter here. Even missing one person, this campus would not be the same. And at TLU, it's how we belong, how we figure out where we fit in, and what we do in our roles that shapes us into people with a purpose and a vocation beyond the borders of this campus. TLU is where we begin. It's where we can always come back, and it's how we get to where we're going.
So what will TLU look like, feel like in the future, in the next 100 years? Well, it will look completely different. The library will be simply amazing. And the new football stadium, which will replace the old one that will be built soon, well, that's incredible too. And notice the water feature. In the next 100 years, a group of TLU students will have figured out how to stop global warming. And in the process, they finally put an end to the longest drought in South Texas history, resulting in the creation of huge, beautiful lakes. And TLU will have waterfront. Even my father's farm will have changed. Pedro, because of all his organic food, will live long, and he will be the first to introduce vertical farming in Seguin, Texas. However, students will still use shovels and pull weeds by hand. Some things never change. And speaking of things that you thought would never change, in a moment of unprecedented cooperation, the town-gown relationship with the city of Seguin finally puts an end to the great debate about where the world's largest pecan resides. Some of you may not know, but there has been a battle with another town, Brunswick, Missouri. Isn't that pathetic, their pecan? It's gone back and forth. Who has the largest pecan? Well, the battle ends for good in the next 100 years when TLU and the city of Seguin rededicate the newly renovated and expanded Jackson Pecan Auditorium. We will win this battle with Brunswick. Yes, TLU and Seguin will look very different at the end of the next 100 years. Yet, I believe and trust that it will still have the same feel. The feel it had 100 years ago and the feel it has today. People will still feel like they belong here. To their parents' dismay, students at beginning their sophomore year will announce that they're headed back home as they come back to campus after the summer. And the relationships on campus will continue to be transformative. Late-night conversations about the meaning of life will be whispered back and forth. Faculty members will still be found discussing with their students what happened in class outside the classroom, in the hallways, along the walkways, and in Lucky's. Theory will engage practice, and passion for a discipline will be passed on to yet another new generation. Staff will still mentor, working side by side with students to do the extracurricular work of this campus. And the good work of community engagement will have grown as students, faculty, and staff take the academy into the neighborhoods of Seguin, as each learns from the other, as each benefits from the other, as we all live together in one community. And in all this, that great TLU conversation, the one about vocation, the one that takes us to that great place where one's passions and gifts begin to meet the world's great needs, this great TLU conversation will continue to happen each and every day far into the future. And finally, one more critical picture from the future. The next 100 years begins tomorrow. What will that picture look like? What will you do with tomorrow, with the days ahead of you, your days at TLU, your days in Seguin? How will you be a part of what happens next? May God inspire us to be bold and creative, faithful and courageous, to find our place and make our mark as the kingdom that comes continues to unfold here in this place, Texas Lutheran University in Seguin, Texas.